Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today, we are going to take a look at Season 1, Episode 10 of Transformers EarthSpark. Hashtag oops! This episode, Mac, it is chock full of painful, excruciating cringe. I had to pause the video a few times to let the cringe pass. It was so bad. So, I guess that means I didn't enjoy the episode, right? Well, to be honest, I probably didn't enjoy it as much as I would have had it not been quite so cringy. But that's not a testimony against the episode. It's because I'm weird like that. As some of you may recall from many moons ago when I reviewed another Nickelodeon show, Glitch Text, specifically the episode Alpha Leader, I am particularly sensitive to cringe, but I recognize cringe's place in the storyteller's toolkit. The brash young commander must make mistakes when handling his new troops in order to be sympathetic. The heroine of a high school drama must do something unforgivably stupid on the first day of class to establish herself as the social underdog. This is a tried and true way of creating conflict. It's real to life, painful to watch, and overall, it improves the quality of the story. I mean, so people tell me. Judged objectively, if you aren't violently allergic to artistic cringe, this is a fun episode, and it does a good job of reminding us of everything the first 10 episodes set up without feeling like a recap episode. It was also full of lies, government overreach, inappropriate use of public property, and just general shadiness. So, let's jump right into the suspicious end. But first, there will be all the spoilers. So if you don't want any of those, I will give you some time to click away. Then you can use the links below the video while you're doing that to get yourself a copy of my books, Humans Are Weird, Let's Work It Out, a collection of short stories about aliens reacting to the cringe of the human race, and Dying Embers, dragons, aliens, and things that go boop in the night. Fun concept here. Go look at the plot of my book, Dying Embers, and see if it feels, familiar. Now, spoilers! You have been warned. Lies, deceptions, and mysterious spaces under barns. And of course, the cringe. The episode starts in the dark reaches of the Ghost base, where some Steve Jobs knockoff senior agent is performing stressful experiments on the captive Decepticons. Now, we don't actually see the Decepticons screaming, but it doesn't look pleasant. Starscream and his goatee are furious, and obviously this is something that Optimus would not approve of, as shown by the fact that Optimus isn't there. Turns out the rest of Ghosts don't actually approve much either. So either knockoff Steve Jobs has some sort of personal goals and is misusing government resources to attain them, goals that involve essentially torturing the less verbal of the cons, or she is acting on orders that come from outside of Ghost. There are also hints that all that time we've seen Agent stick up his spine running around outside the Ghost headquarters, that might have been more her doing than his. See, it turns out the Ghost's mission, their official mission, is only to capture and restrain cons that are actively causing trouble. The Decepticons that mind their own business are to be left alone. This is either a humanitarian issue, not wanting to imprison what are essentially, after all, just soldiers, or is an issue of resource scarcity. Probably both. I mean, Ghost does have to feed those cons, and Energon ain't cheap. So, Agent Glasses, as I'm going to call him from here on out, he tends to hang out around the base when left to his own devices. But it turns out it's awfully hard to break the regulations and torture cons when there are strict rule-abiding fellows like Agent Glasses lingering around. So what we took in the first 10 episodes, when we saw Agent Glasses actively pursuing everything Cybertronian that moved, we assumed it was on his own initiative, but it looks like it might have been him quietly obeying orders, either completely in the spirit of orders or just obeying the letter of the orders. See, when I wondered about how the show was going to portray the relationship between Agent Glasses and our Earthbound family of Terrans and humans, I'd had questions. Yes, he has been the big bad that is chasing them, but the show also took time to show out show him reacting to protect Robbie. Agent Glasses actively let what he thought was a Decepticon escape to avoid injuring what was, as far as he knew, a random human kid. That's solid good guy behavior. In this episode, we see more of that refreshingly complex moral characterization. Yes, our beloved main characters are afraid of this guy. They are unquestionably see him as a threat, but he would also presumably object to the mistreatment of the Decepticon prisoners and actively works to keep Ghost's actions within their charter, avoiding governmental overreach. I like this presentation. He's not just a blind minion of the state. He's got some depth to him. Then, in this very first scene, we get to the first bit of cringe. And I mentioned this one specifically. I'm not going to go into the details of all the other, because they all tend to fall into one category. But this one I want to mention specifically because I'm not sure about it. This one specific instance of cringe might have been deliberate on the writer's part. Just another aspect of Agent Glass's stick-in-the-mud personality. But, on the other hand, what it was several seconds of dry reading some of the most boring lines I've ever heard actually stated in a cartoon, and I did not enjoy the scene. Nor could I swear that this was artistically necessary cringe, as the later moments so obviously were. We have to see if this rulebook quoting cringe comes up again and is central to the story. Honestly, I am hoping that the show brings Ultra Magnus in, or maybe even Prowl. I really get the feeling that Agent Glasses is going to need a rulebook reading buddy by the time this is over, and by the time his loyalties have been tested in every direction. So, that is the ghost side of things. We have knockoff Steve Jobs torturing Decepticons, at least the Decepticons who can't verbally complain about it, giving knockoff Steve Jobs plausible deniability, while Optimus is not in the house. Then we have Agent Glasses, who is showing signs of an active conscience and a moral compass, in addition to the rule books that he ate for breakfast. And that, my friends, is what we call preparing conflict. Then we have the Malto bot side of things. The three newest Terrans, #Jawbreaker and Nightshade, have been trying to settle in on the farm, but it turns out that the barn is far from big enough for the 5 of them now. And this is where all the artistic cringe comes in. It is very, very well written, and it's therefore very, very painful to watch for me. You see, everyone is trying to find their place in this family. You have the more mature Twitch and Thrash, who are painfully aware that they are desperately trying to fill a role that they do not feel confident that they can, and they feel that they're failing, but they still feel that they have to fake it till they make it. Then you have the younger, less experienced, and more confident 3, confident in their lack of experience, who don't yet know that they are doing anything dangerous, wrong, or cringe. And as I said, the painful cringe abounds. Thrash is loving his role as Big Brother and is using what he learned from Bumblebee's mistakes to avoid being overbearing. And then you have, on the other hand, Nightshade, who Thrash is trying to mentor here, not being the least bit interested in learning. Meanwhile, Twitch is throwing everything into coaxing the, frankly rather lazy hashtag out of her shell to get her a shell, and in this instance, Twitch cheerfully resorts to bribery and not faults, but let's say enhanced enthusiasm. Come on, let's go! Kind of like an off-brand Steve from Blue's Clues. And Jawbreaker, the big bulky one? Well, Jawbreaker is dealing with some personal space issues and a lack of understanding of what the limits are, which makes perfect sense for someone who was literally born yesterday and lives in a barn. And it is painful and cringe and delightful. I really found Jawbreaker. I think I had my own Jawbreaker phase where I didn't get personal space, and anyway, it's all a fun romp. You're mixing these realistic sibling relationships with a heaping scoopful of suspension of disbelief. Yes, yep, and that's where we get into the suspension of disbelief that made me not cringe, but definitely roll my eyes. Our main characters are once more protected far beyond reason by the utter inability of anyone in this world to look around them or turn around and notice the giant robots who are supposedly sneaking around. Yes, Bumblebee is a scout who is good at sneaking, and yes, I haven't reached the end of my suspension of disbelief yet, but like I said, I did roll my eyes and smile. Then, at the end of the episode, you have the thing that really made me raise my eyebrows. In a good way. It all centers around Nightshade and that little B arc in this story. Now, Nightshade is turning out to be, looks like condescending, at best, if you want to call it that. But that's not what I want to talk about. If you've listened this far, then you've probably seen the show, so you saw that massive chamber below the barn. Now, there is no way Nightshade made that chamber. That chamber was comprised of steel beams and intricate circular doors, the kind that you put missiles through. That was a military complex level of structural engineering. There's no way in the pit that Nightshade, a child, built that entire chamber. Note that when Nightshade asks for help, only the load-bearing ability of wood was mentioned. Note the obviously primitively built fences and wooden structures scattered around a steel and concrete bunker that has clearly been there for a while. Now, I see two possibilities here. One, this is bad writing design on the creator's parts, and they are in fact asking us to think that this child built that entire structure and installed those stairways, catwalks, doors, and acquiring all the necessary hardware, developing those skills, doing all this without anyone in the loving and attentive Malto family somehow finding out what was going on. Now, that would be just bad writing. That goes far beyond the accepted suspension of disbelief for this show. And being a Transformers show, the suspension of disbelief is fairly narrow. It's focused entirely on physics. The size of the Transformers shifting in proportion to what the scene needs from them, and the structural integrity of standard humans' construction standing up to the weight of these giant robots. That's the only wiggle room you really get in a show like this. And to see writing that poor or visual design that poor would really make me rather sad. However, the other option raises some more interesting in-story but quite terrifying questions. So, option 2. There actually was a military-grade bunker just sitting below the Malto's farm this entire time. Their barn was built on top of some subterranean structure that just happens to be conveniently sized for giant robots. Obviously, I like this one better because where do those doors lead to then? But this does raise an important question. Well, several questions really. But the one I want to focus on is, why is Nightshade hiding the pre-existence of this bunker? I mean, obviously Nightshade is young, with all the stupidity that being literally born yesterday entails. But why didn't this child come running to the others with excitement the moment there was a giant cavern discovered beneath the barn? I mean, perhaps someone that immature just didn't understand the significance of a giant military-grade bunker existing under the barn, and probably hasn't seen the Avengers yet. So, which leads me to my next question via Hawkeye from that first Avengers movies. When you have a door, doors open two ways. And what might come through the other side of those round bunker doors in that space beneath the barn? It's supposed to be a hideout for them to keep them safe. But again, there's no way that a child made that bunker. So, anyway, this episode was very interesting. It established conflict within as well as with Ghost. It raises several questions with varying levels of consequences promised in the answers. And it gently reminds us that this is, in fact, a story about giant robots from outer space, and our suspension of disbelief is going to be rather necessary to the plot at this point. But what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Where did that giant structure under the barn come from? Did Nightshade build it, or was it pre-existing? What is this conflict that's being set up within the power structure of Ghost, and how nepotistic is it? And what is the real relationship between Agent Glasses and knockoff Steve Jobs? Please leave a comment below the video. Tell me what you think. I would love to hear your theories as always. Hit that like and subscribe button. Go check out my books and links below the video. And peace out, my wonderful viewers.